Hello again and welcome to another bearing installation video featuring Boca bearings. In today's video I will be both removing and installing bearings in a used SK90 two-stroke glow engine. Now I'll be installing some economy Boca bearings, but first we need to remove the originals. So let's get right to the table. Okay, so here on the table I've got this SK90 two-stroke engine. It's all disassembled with the exception of the crankcase and the bearings, obviously. So the first order of business is going to be removing these bearings from this engine. And this engine probably has, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 runs on it. So the tools I'm going to be using to remove these bearings is I've just got a piece of hardwood here that I can use just to help drive the crankshaft out. I've got a light hammer. I've got a dowel rod to help me get the front bearing out if necessary, and I've also got just a flat nose punch to remove the rear crankcase bearing, again if necessary. So when you're dealing with a used engine of, you know, definitely unknown origins or however much use it's got, you never know how difficult the bearings are going to be to remove. So I'm going to heat this up pretty heavily so I can get this aluminum to expand quite extensively. And the bearings in here, I mean, this looks like a really low time engine, and like I said, I think it's only got about maybe 10 runs on it. The bearings feel fine, but we're going to go ahead and replace them with some Boca bearings. So I'm going to put my heat resistant glove on and get my heat gun out here, and we're going to heat this thing up. Okay, so this engine should be nice and warm to get these bearings out now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to tap on the crankshaft to get it to come out. Hopefully the bearing comes out with it, but you never know, it may stay in there. So let's just give this a shot and see what happens. And it looks like we're lucky in that the bearing came out with that engine. So now I'll have to show how to remove that bearing from the crankcase. So the next thing I'm going to do is see if this dowel is going to be long enough to get in here and engage this front bearing, and it is. So it should be warm enough for me just to simply tap this out right now. Yeah, that was easy. That front bearing is out. So that was about as smooth of a bearing removal as it can get. Now to see how hot this is. It's not that hot. I should be able to do this. Now to remove this rear bearing here, what I'll typically do is I'll do something like this to remove it, knock it down, but if that doesn't work, then I'm going to have to use another drive to tap it off, just like that. So there, now we've got both bearings removed from this engine and crankshaft, and now we can move on to the installation of the new bearings. Okay, so now that I've wiped off the mat here a little bit, I've removed some of the tools I was using for removal, and now I've got a short socket extension that I'm going to use for installation of the main bearing and crankshaft into the crankcase, and then of course again the same piece of wood and light hammer to install the front bearing. So I've got the Boca bearing, economy Boca bearing set here, or kit. It is ENK 216. So let's just remove these bearings, and it looks like these bearings are already set up for installation. The rear bearing does not have any seals or shields on it, so that's a very good thing. That's exactly how I would be installing them anyway. And the front bearing looks like it's got 2 metal shields, which is fine also. I'm just going to leave those as they are. So this engine had some oil inside of it already from disassembly, so it's pretty well lubricated already, but I'm still going to use just a little bit of lightning lube here, road power, to just, actually what I'm going to do is I'm just going to squirt some in the back of this crankcase here and just touch my finger in there and use that to lubricate the outside of these bearings because they're completely dry. And then I'll just make sure that my bearing seat area there is good and that I do have some lubrication on the crankshaft. So what I'm going to do here before I install the bearings is I'm going to go ahead and put this main bearing. Let's just make sure that's the right size. I've never used this kit before. Just going to put this main bearing on the crankshaft here. So that thing is installed and ready to go. And this has got sufficient oil, lubrication in there. So now what I'm going to do is put my glove on, heat this crankcase up one more time, and expand, get the metal to expand, and so it can accept these bearings. That should be good. Well, that bearing feels like it's just about to just drop right in place. And that bearing is seated. Now I just want to make sure I've got an opening here enough to facilitate my crankshaft going in here. And boy, I don't even know if that's really going to need much tapping at all. That thing looks like it just about slid right into place. And it looks like that rear bearing is installed now too. So that was just about as simple of a bearing replacement and installation, or removal and installation, as I've come across in a very long time. So that is the basic techniques for removing and installing bearings on a used engine.